Hey, I'm Julie Rose. Welcome to Love What You Love. I'm an author, creator, and enthusiast, and I've always been intrigued by the things that people are super into. So every week, I'll introduce you to another fascinating human who's into really interesting stuff. Welcome back, or welcome. We have Love What You Love merch. I'll put a link to the shop in the show notes. While we're doing announcements, just a heads up that the podcast is going to be on a break for the first 2 weeks of January, and we'll be back on January 19th. But of course, we'll have episodes through the end of December. Okay, now that we've got all of that out of the way, let's get right to this week's guest. Julie Develin is an expert in sports card collecting and has been an avid collector since she was a little kid. She's amassed a collection of cards and memorabilia so large, she isn't even really sure how many cards she has. In this conversation, we talk about the connection between the pandemic and the surge of sports card collecting, the origin of sports cards, nostalgia, creating safe spaces for women in the hobby, why your box of 1990s baseball cards probably aren't worth much, but your single Mike Trout rookie card definitely is, the zen of looking through your collection, and so much more. So find out why Julie loves collecting sports cards, and why you might learn to love it too. Hello, Julie. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Julie. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, me too. It's exciting to have two Julies talking. I don't know, maybe the world will explode or something with two excitable Julies talking to each other.
Absolutely. It's always fun to talk to another Julie. Exactly. And I am Julie Ann. Are you Julie Ann?
No, I'm not. I'm just plain old Julie.
Just plain old Julie. Okay.
So you are a collector of sports cards, a collector probably of memorabilia too, a sports fan. You've been a panelist at the National Sports Collectors Convention, blogger and expert. How did you get into it, and how long have you been collecting?
That's a great question. So I would say this. When I was young, and I'm not young anymore, but when I was young, I would say, maybe 10, 11, 12 years old. That was during the boom, if you will, of the sports card industry. I collected cards with friends, with kids in the neighborhood. We went to some card shops and, just sort of did it for fun. And I grew up in a household. My dad was really into baseball, and I was into baseball as well. And I started collecting baseball cards basically because of that. But, the baseball card industry really sort of took off in the late 80s, and then into the 90s and the early 2000s. And then things slowed down a little bit. But I just sort of got into it because I love baseball, and I love the baseball players and just the social aspect, the camaraderie with friends. I recall, as a child, sort of trading cards with people. And that's pretty much how I got into it. It was just something that I found and I enjoyed.
Now, do you collect other things as well, or it's sports cards you've loved and you've just kept on with that?
Yeah, it's pretty much just sports cards. I don't really have any other collections of things, which is good because I'm running out of space. So, but it's also some memorabilia as well.
Okay.
Not just the cards. It's also, I have some 8x10s with autographs on them. I have some bobbleheads, things like that.
How long have there have been baseball cards? I think it's been very, very long. And then what caused the boom in the 80s and 90s?
Yeah, since the 1800s. I'm pretty sure that's when baseball cards first started, and they were found in tobacco, in cigarette boxes.
Oh.
And yeah, some of the most some of the most valuable cards, some of the most collectible cards are these mini baseball cards. To those who aren't really well versed in the industry, you might have heard of the Honus Wagner card. And that's the one that sold for like $3 million or something insane. Yeah. So a card like that was found in the cigarette boxes. So it's been around for a very, very long time. There are cards hundreds of years old.
And what was the purpose of having the cards in the cigarette boxes?
I wish I could tell you that. I don't know.
Okay, go on.
Maybe it made people, more prone to buy this certain brand of cigarette. I don't know.
Collect them all.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, got it. So then what caused the big kind of spike in the 80s?
I think it was Jose Canseco was a big name back then. People really liked him. They liked, to collect him. And he was just sort of like this figure that people sort of they flocked to. I think also the sports card companies just started producing more product. And that actually turned out to be their downfall. They started with more different product offerings. Also, people started paying a lot of money for these cards. And of course, money rules all, right? So that was another reason that it became super popular back then, from what I can recall. I mean, we thought back in the day, that we were our sports cards were going to pay for our college education. And that, certainly was not the case. Although today some cards could, but I'm sure we'll get to that later. It was just, they were overly produced during that time. They were widely available, and it just sort of caught on as a thing.
So there's been a kind of resurgence in collecting. Is it more adults looking to make a profit? Like, do kids even collect cards anymore?
That's one of the things that's kind of sad. You can look at it in one of two ways. It's either good for the industry or not. There's not many people who really see the in between. I see less and less children getting involved only because of the cost of the cards currently. And again, like I said, I'm sure we'll get to present day, but it's also at this juncture very difficult to even find cards to buy.
How's that? So where would you, like when you were a kid, where did you buy them, and then where do you buy them now?
When I was a kid, we would go to the local card store. There were card shops, and we would go, and there'd be binders of cards, and we would look in the binders and sort of pick out the cards. And there were also, at retail establishments, you could find packs of cards. You could buy them there. Now, where you would go. That's sort of a loaded question too. There's a lot of different places you can go. If I was going to go and I wanted to guarantee myself sports cards, like I would definitely find them. I would go online. Obviously, I would go to eBay. I would go to certain outlets, blowoutcards.com. I would go into group breaking, which I'm sure we'll get to as well. But if you wanted to go to, say, Target or Walmart and try and find cards, you're hard pressed to do it because they're so popular that as soon as they hit the shelves, people are buying them. And not just buying one box, they're buying all of them. And there are people that actually wait in line, and they know when the distributor is going to come. They know when the distributor is going to come. And I've seen pictures online of these long lines of people just waiting for the cards to arrive. So when we talk about children getting involved, I think that hinders it just a little bit because you have all these adults who are looking to turn a profit, because the boxes of cards that are found in places like Walmart, places like Target, you can turn around and sell them for 3 or 4 or maybe even more times their cost. And the cost generally for a blaster box of cards is about $20.
Wow. There's some serious profit that can be made.
Serious profit. And what some retailers have done, some Walmarts, some Targets, and there are other outlets that sell cards too, but those are just two of the bigger ones. Some of them have actually put limits on the number of boxes you can buy.
Do card shops even exist anymore?
They do. They're few and far between. But they do exist. Most of them are not just card shops. Most of them are card and memorabilia shops. So they're selling the memorabilia alongside the cards. But they are also some of the culprits of buying up all the retail product, because they buy it and they sell it in their stores as well. Because it's limited. The distributors limit the amount that each venue kind of gets, and it's based on lots of different things.
Do you collect all sports or just baseball?
I mainly collect baseball, but over the years I have started collecting other sports, mainly basketball and football also. My first love is and always will be baseball. I'm a huge Phillies fan. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, live in the Baltimore area now, but will always be a huge Phillies fan. I don't miss a game. I watch every Phillies game.
Wow.
Yeah. And, I collect a lot of Phillies cards. I also like basketball too. And it's fun to collect basketball. And believe it or not, I just bought a box of WNBA basketball cards.
Nice. Are those becoming a thing now?
They're becoming a thing. Absolutely. Yeah. One of the companies put out their first product of WNBA. It's called Prism, and it's like a flagship product, and it's very, very popular. So I decided to buy a box, and I guess I'll get into that too.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. Well, and so do you have like an approach to collecting? Like, do you pick a player and get all of their cards for, over multiple years, or do you like have a complete set of the team, or how do you approach your collecting?
Yeah, so it sort of comes and goes in waves. So for a while, I was a very, very big Roy Halladay fan. And once he went to the Phillies, I decided I wanted to start to collect just his cards.
For folks who don't know who Roy Halladay is, and I know that sounds like blasphemy, but can you explain who Roy Halladay is? Yeah,
Roy Halladay was a pitcher, very, very good pitcher. He's in the Hall of Fame now. He started with the Blue Jays, and then he went to the Phillies in 2010 or 2011. I can't remember the exact year. And then he, pitched a perfect game. He pitched a no-hitter in the playoffs. So I loved his work ethic. I loved the way he carried himself, and I just sort of took a liking to Roy Halladay and everything that he stood for. So I decided, you know what? I like him. I'm going to collect his cards. So I did. I have thousands of them, all in binders.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do you keep your cards? And then again, how do you approach? Are you all Phillies, all Roy? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, no, I'm not all Phillies at all. I don't really have an approach at this point, but that's the beauty of collecting. There are some people that do. There are some people that put sets together. There are some people that only collect certain teams. There are some people that collect certain players. There are some people that do a combination of all of those things. And I think that because the industry has gotten so sort of big and in a way cumbersome, it helps to have a philosophy or some kind of method. And I may need to consider that. So thank you, Julie. I need to stop just buying and maybe have a method to my madness. But no, sometimes I'll go to card shows, and back when that was a thing before COVID, and I would just buy cards that I liked. To me, there's an art form. It really is. It's not just so much the player, it's how the card looks too.
What kind of is your favorite aesthetic in a card?
Well, some people may or may not know that cards now are not just cards. What do I mean by that? So it's no longer just a piece of cardboard with a picture on it. Now there are autographs on cards, and there are pieces of game-used memorabilia on cards. What card companies do is they will purchase game-used memorabilia from the major sports teams, and they will literally cut them up into pieces.
Like jerseys, kind of
like
thing?
Jerseys,
Mm-hmm.
like jerseys, like shoes, like pieces of the batting gloves, pieces of hats, literally anything that a player would wear. You can find a card with that. Now, the other cool thing that companies will do is they'll put pieces of maybe a base, that a runner would step on. They put pieces of a football, pieces of a baseball. What it does is it brings fans closer to the game. You're holding a piece of something that your favorite team or your favorite player touched. And there's something to that that's just really appealing. So, oh gosh, I forget the question, Julie. I'm getting off on a tangent again.
This is good. I can tell how excited you are. So just about the aesthetic, so it's not just cardboard anymore, but it's got stuff in it.
Yeah, it's got stuff in it. But then there are some that are just cardboard too, but it's not just cardboard. Now it's plastic. Now it's there's all different ways that cards are made. And it's just been amazing watching technology sort of, move forward and cards move forward with technology. There is a whole subculture of digital card collectors as well. I don't dabble in that, but there are some people who collect digital cards and they have a whole portfolio of them.
How does that work? Is it just JPEGs?
Yeah, I would imagine that the card companies will put them out on their sites. And I'm not really well versed in it, but I know that there are certain cards that are more rare than others, and you can have like an online portfolio of cards and that kind of thing. I prefer to have the tangible cards, though.
The addition of these, the player-worn stuff and the autographs, was that the case kind of early on, or is that more of a 2010s, 2020s invention?
100% 2010s, 2020s. There were some autograph cards back in the early 2000s. They are much more few and far between than they are today, of course. So today, what'll happen is you'll open a box of cards, and there are some people who just cast aside the cards that don't have a autograph or a piece of game used memorabilia, or some people only collect that stuff. So yeah, again, there's really no right or wrong way to collect, but since 2010 or a little bit before that, the cards have really taken off in terms of what you'll find on a card, what you'll find in a card, and what the collector is looking for.
And so that, of course, increases the price and then the desirability, which means that kids can't get into it really as much.
That is one argument. Yes, that is one argument. Yeah. I know, I think that there are some collectors who feel it's sort of their responsibility or a responsibility for those of us who have been collecting a long time to ensure that children do have the opportunity to get into it. So, for example, what I do is I put together binders for my nieces and my nephew. And I'm going to make sure that they have, a base, if you will, if they want, to ever collect.
I want to switch gears a little bit. Did you play sports growing up at all?
I played sports growing up, and I still play sports to this day.
Nice.
Absolutely.
What do you play?
Yeah. I'm a softball player. I played fast pitch softball for most of my life. I played in college. And I also, now I play slow pitch softball competitively, tournament teams. We travel all over the place. So it's a lot of fun. In high school, I played basketball. I wasn't very good. Ran cross country. I was even worse at that. But I'm also I'm a CrossFit athlete. I enjoy working out. I ride my Peloton. So yeah, sports is my life.
How did you know that you were all in on collecting cards? Like, was there a moment where you're like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever?
That's a great question. I don't know how I knew. Like, there wasn't like a moment in time where I was like, oh, yep, this is my thing, right? I just started doing it, and I loved it. Again, it's not just, it's also there's also a social aspect to it. And it's like just getting around people with common interests and, talking about the cards and, oh, you have that card. Oh, let's trade. That was more when I was younger, so I collected when I was younger, and then I stopped for a while in high school, and then I got to college and I started collecting again, and I started to put sets together at that point. And then, that kind of got expensive. In college, you don't have that much money to just throw around. So I stopped again, and then I started again back in about 2010. And I haven't stopped since. It's just been something that has been a joy in my life. I've made some of my most dear friends with fellow collectors, and yeah, it's just been a lot of fun. So,
how many cards do you have in your collection, would you estimate?
I get that question a lot when I say, oh yeah, I collect sports cards. And the answer is I could never give you an exact number. I'll tell you it's tens of thousands.
Wow.
I can't imagine that it's not tens of thousands. I think you asked me a question earlier about how do I store the cards. I have and I didn't answer it. I have cards in binders. But I also have cards in 5,000 count boxes. They make special boxes where you can put sports cards. And some of the boxes are 5,000 count. Some of them are smaller. But I have several of them. And then I have some many, many, many hundreds of cards, probably thousands of cards that are loose, but they're in protective cases. And those are the cards that are deemed a little bit more valuable than some of the others that are in the boxes. So, what's fun about it, in a way, like I'll take a day on a weekend and I'll just, grab some of the boxes and just go through cards because you have so many. In some ways, you forget what you even have. And you may find that something in an older box is now much more relevant. And maybe it's something that if you wanted to sell it, you could sell it for $100, or more, right? Depending upon sort of how the player is doing.
So it's like you find a rookie card that you wouldn't have looked at twice 5 years ago, but now you're like, oh, this guy's doing great.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah.
Got it. Now, what would you say, so this two-part, what's your most valuable card or piece of memorabilia, and then what is your favorite?
My most valuable, that's hard to say, because the other thing about cards is card grading. So what do I mean by that? So if you think, so there's a lot of, sadly, there's a lot of frauds in the industry, a lot of fake cards that go around because of how valuable they are. So there are companies that put grades on cards that basically say, yes, this is real. So once a card has that sort of, yes, this is real stamp on it, not stamp on it, it's in a case, and it says, and it grades for a number from generally 1 to 10, 10 being the best in terms of condition, that increases the value exponentially. One of my most valuable, if you will, cards is my Mike Trout Gem Mint rookie card, 2011 Topps update. To some of the listeners, that may sound Greek. That card has gone up in value. I bought it for $40. Maybe back in 2012 or 2013. And it's worth probably about $2,000 right now.
Wow.
I have right now. Yeah. But that's something that you hold on to because that's just going to keep going up and up. I have several Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is a basketball player. I have several of his cards that once graded, they'll be a few thousand. I have a lot of Zion Williamson, again, basketball, several of his cards that are worth in the thousands. I mean, I don't know that I do it, that I collect for what is a card worth, if that makes sense. Right. I do sell some cards. There are just some that I don't really need or want to have in my collection. So I'll sell them, then you'll be able to buy more of what you want. Right. Value wise, worth wise, I couldn't say, which one is the most valuable. I have so many.
Of all of what you have, what is your most favorite, or what has the best memory associated with it?
Best memory is a Tim Belcher card that I had, and he was a pitcher for the Dodgers, and it's actually the first card I ever bought in a store. It cost me 10 cents, and I thought that I'd sell it for 100 times that when I was ready to go to college. But so that's like one of those cards that if I were to try and sell it, somebody would say, no, why would you even try to sell me that card, right? But to me, it has sentimental value. I don't have a one favorite card. I have several cards that I like better than some others. For example, I do have one of those tobacco cards that I bought many, many years ago. And I think I got that for like $10. And it's just cool to have a baseball card that's over 100 years old. And all of my Roy Halladay cards, his autograph cards that I have, and I have several binders worth of his cards, so those are among my favorite as well.
Sure.
There are times that again I'll just sit down and I'll look at what I have, and you forget what you have. You have so many, right? So I'm able to sort of enjoy it again when I see them.
Yeah. Now, are you a pitcher?
No, I'm actually a catcher.
Oh, okay. So you have a great perspective on pitchers then.
I do. I that was one of the fun parts of the game of softball for me, was getting to call a game and work with the pitchers and really establish that camaraderie.
So who's your favorite catcher right now?
JT Realmuto. And I hope the Phillies re-sign him. JT Realmuto is, in my opinion, yes, I'm biased, but he's the best catcher in baseball. And maybe I should get some of his cards. I don't have any. Actually, I'm sure I have some. I don't have any of his autographs or anything like that. So But no, he's a fantastic catcher. And then prior to him was Carlos Ruiz, who was Roy Halladay's catcher.
So now, has card collecting, memorabilia collecting, has it branched off into like other interests that you would have never guessed?
I wouldn't say, no, I wouldn't say that. I did at one point have a blog that I ran. So I did a lot of writing on sports cards, and I've been recently thinking about sort of revamping that and getting that back up to speed again. I did some writing about sports cards for some card outlets, which is kind of cool. So, but no, I don't think so. It's just something it's just something that's so ingrained in me, and it really hasn't branched off into anything else that I can think of.
Are there misconceptions about sports card collecting that just drive you crazy?
Well, sure. I mean, from a female collector standpoint, one of the misconceptions is that females don't collect, is that women don't know anything about sports, all of the gender stereotypes that you can think about. Believe it or not, there is a huge subculture of women who collect. I'm in a group on Facebook of just women collectors, and if there are any women listening and they want to join that group, they can go to Women in Cards and search that, and then ask for an invite. It's like a safe space where women can go and have discussions and not have to sort of worry about maybe having some commentary from folks who maybe think that we shouldn't be there. Some of the other misconceptions surrounding collecting, I would say that when I tell people I collect, I generally get two typical reactions. First, the simple question is why? Why do you collect pieces of cardboard with pictures of men and now women on them? People are like, well, what do you do with them? I'm like, I don't know. I just sort of have them. But it brings me joy. Another misconception is that the cards that people had in the 80s and 90s are worth something. Sadly, they're not. They're worth more if you would burn them for heat than they are. Now, there are some needles in the haystack. There are some cards back then. Players like Alex Rodriguez, Derek Jeter, some of the Hall of Famers. There are some cards from that time that are valuable, but there was so much mass production and overproduction during that time that the cards really aren't worth much of anything anymore. So the reaction I generally get too is, oh, I used to collect cards. I have so many, or what are they worth? And I would say probably nothing. I've had a lot of people reach out to me to say, hey, can you look at my cards and let me know what I have? And I love doing that as well.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Because then you just get to look at more cards.
I do. I get to look at more cards, and occasionally you do find that needle in a haystack.
I know this is entirely subjective. Of the current crop, like since 2010, what is like the worst or the ugliest or just the stupidest card you've seen?
The worst or the ugliest or the stupidest? Oh my gosh. None of them are ugly, Julie. They're all beautiful. They're all works of art. Yeah. There are some so there are some companies that go a little bit too far in terms of the number of products that they put out, and just aesthetically, some of them are not very visually appealing because they're trying too hard to sell. The sales are so good, they're trying too hard to sell as much as they can. So they're just like, oh, we're going to throw this against the wall to see if it sticks. Some of the uglier cards are the ones where maybe the person signing it didn't take great care when they signed it, the athlete signing it. And sometimes what companies will do is they'll have athletes sign sheets of stickers, and then they'll take those stickers and they'll put them on the cards and say it's an autograph card, which technically it is. The cards that are more sought after are the ones with the actual autograph on the card. But those sticker autographs allow companies to produce more of those autographs. So sometimes they'll like sign off the sticker and it'll just be really, really ugly. There are some athletes that don't really care, and they'll just it'll just be like one line. It will be their autograph. And that's not something that collectors are looking for. So I would say some of those are the most ugly that I've seen over the years.
What would be your favorite memory associated with collecting cards?
Probably looking through them with my dad when I was younger. If I'm going to take it in two parts, when I was younger, it's definitely, memories with my dad. And then more recently, meeting my friends, Rich and Sarah, who've become dear friends. They work for Leighton Sports Cards, which is a group break shop. What's a group break? That's a whole other question, right? I'll get to that in a second. But when I met them, some of my most dear friendships have been through card collecting, and it's really cool. So there are retail boxes, there are hobby boxes. Hobby boxes are the boxes that are sent to distributors. They're sent to card shops. You can't buy a hobby box in a retail store. Hobby boxes are more expensive. They have different kinds of cards in them. Because they're so expensive, what people do, a whole bunch of people get together and they pay a little bit of money to maybe get a team or a player. So somebody else will open the boxes, and let's say LeBron James is my player. I get every card of LeBron James that comes out of the boxes.
And like you pay, like you go in like, here's $100.
Exactly.
Whatever LeBron comes out. If it's 1, if it's 5, that's what you get.
Exactly. And what it does is it makes some of the more valuable cards affordable for people, because boxes of cards now are hundreds of dollars. Some of them are thousands of dollars. It's the industry is just skyrocketed.
And there are break channels like on YouTube and Twitch, right? I mean, that's one of the ways they do it.
Exactly. Yeah. YouTube, Twitch. Some folks do it on Instagram Live, Facebook, all over the place. There are different channels that you can go to watch different people break, and it's really become a social experience for folks. It's done live. These are many of them are reputable businesses that make millions of dollars a year, or they do millions of dollars in sales per year. There's people that chat during the breaks. And it's a lot of fun to see what comes out. Even if you're not in the break, you can watch and just sort of chat along, and you can see what comes out of the boxes.
And it's a little bit like watching like a gamer do a playthrough. You just kind of get this vicarious thrill of seeing, what cards come out of the box.
Absolutely. And if it's your card, you get even more of a thrill. So it's a lot of fun. That's definitely changed the industry as well. It's gotten more people into collecting. But again, generally not children, although I do know a lot of folks who will make it a father-son thing, or a father-daughter, mother-daughter thing even, to watch these breaks, and they do it, just as a family time thing. Very cool.
So what's the most surprising thing that you've learned or maybe experienced as a result of being a collector?
I don't know. I think something that surprises me, just knowing how I am, is that it really is a sense of calm for me when I just sit and I go through boxes of cards, or I look at cards, and it takes my mind away from everyday life. Yeah, I mean, there's not too much that surprises me anymore when it comes to sports cards. But I will say maybe something that is surprising is how much the industry has exploded during the pandemic. And I think some of that was because we didn't have sports for so long. Folks were trying to find a way to sort of get close to sports again. So they got back into collecting, or maybe they joined more group breaks. But it's just been an absolute explosion over the past, I would say, year. And it was starting before that as well. But the pandemic really, really changed things a lot.
Someone's listening to this podcast, they're like, yeah, that's cool. I want to get in on that. Maybe they collected when they were a kid, or they've never collected. How would you recommend they take the first step?
One way to do it would just be to go on eBay and because a lot of buying and selling is done on eBay. Go on eBay, just search sports cards, take a look at what's out there, right? Because it's very, very overwhelming. I would also say one way to do it would be to think of what you like and focus on that first. So if it's vintage cards, if it's soccer cards, if it's WNBA, whatever, focus on one thing so that way you're not overwhelmed. And yeah, I would say also watch group breaks on YouTube, watch them on Twitch. It's free to do, right? Look at some of the online forums. Stay within your means as well. There are a lot of folks who buy thousands and thousands of dollars worth of cards, and maybe they shouldn't. Do what makes you happy when it comes to collecting, and don't worry about what other people think, I think is something also to keep in mind as well.
That's great life advice too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Julie, this has been a real pleasure. I've learned so much. I really thank you for taking so much time to talk with me about this.
It's been a pleasure. It's a passion of mine, and I appreciate the conversation. And thank you again.
It was such a treat to talk with Julie. It was so interesting. You can find her on Twitter at @funnerhere. I'll put a link in the show notes, of course, along with a link to the Women in Cards Facebook group. Just a reminder, you can find the podcast on Instagram at LoveWhatYouLovePod, on Twitter at WhatYouLovePod, and the website is lovewhatyoulovepod.com. Zeke Rodriguez-Thomas at MindJam Media provides amazing editing assistance, truly amazing. You can find Zeke at mindjammedia.com. Also, all of the transcripts for Love What You Love episodes are available for everyone on the website. Thank you, as always, to Emily White for the amazing transcripts and the feedback. If you need transcripts, reach out to her at hireemilywhite@gmail.com. The music for Love What You Love is called Inspiring Hope by Pink Sounds. A link to that artist is included in the show notes. Okay, that's it for this week. Go out there, love the hell out of whatever it is that you love. You need it, and we need it. Thanks for listening. Let's hang out again soon.
There's some good in this world, Mr. Fertile. And it's worth fighting